Yes, it says the recording's in progress. So welcome back, Rio Grande Guardian viewers, to the latest in our Community Spotlight series. Very pleased to have Matt back with me. Matt Ruszack. Matt, how are you doing?
Good, Steve. How about yourself?
Good. Regular viewers will know that we connect with you monthly. That hasn't happened for a few months, but that's history now. Great to have you back now. And I've got to tell the viewers, we have a new title for Matt. Matt is now Vice President for Economic Development at the Council for South Texas Economic Progress, otherwise known as CoStep. Matt, congratulations on your new gig.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I'm very honored to be part of the CoStep team and excited about moving our regional economic development efforts forward.
Great. And maybe we'll have another Zoom all about that work, if that works for you. If you've
Absolutely.
got some really good news items to tell us about.
Absolutely, be glad to.
Good. Okay, so today, as we're getting back to looking at the sales tax revenue collections for the Rio Grande Valley, I'll just say that we're looking at, this is the September report. Matt's been crunching the numbers that come out of the Texas Comptroller's Office, and the September report looks at the sales for July 2021. So Matt, let me hand it over to you, and please tell us how it all went in July 2021.
Absolutely, Steve. So yeah, glad to be back on and talking about sales tax, and to a couple of months we here and there spottily missed. To be honest, we didn't really miss much because the news in those months was good. And this September report, which, as you mentioned, reflects the July sales, is just as good. Overall, it's been really good news for quite a while now. When we look at these numbers, we always like to frame them up as reference points. And for us, the reference points are the state of Texas and the Corpus Christi area and the Laredo area. To kind of have an idea of where the valley is positioned in that constellation. So let's talk about the state of Texas first. For the state of Texas, comparing September of 2021 report to September of 2020, which is July 2021 sales to July of 2020 sales, the state of Texas as a whole is up a healthy 20.3%. So a really good number for the state. Our friends over in the Laredo area, Webb County as a whole, is up 20.08%, so right in line with the state. And our friends over in the Corpus Christi area in Nueces County are up 15.54%, so just a little bit behind, but not too far off from the other two. How'd the Valley do? Well, kind of the same news we've had for the rest several months since I've been doing this report. We are up, and we are up more than all of our neighbors in the state as a whole. We are up as a valley, up 22.87%. That growth is primarily driven by the two big counties, by Hidalgo County and Cameron County. If we look at Hidalgo County numbers, Hidalgo County as a whole was up 22.19%, and Cameron County number was up 26.32%. So really strong performance. And what we're seeing also in this report, specifically looking at those numbers, is we have these traditional destination communities really coming back strong. After some of the COVID shift discussion we've had in the past. Those numbers are really good. With a start in Cameron County, let's look at Brownsville. Brownsville's up 28.83%. Port Isabel was up 40.03%, and that kind of gives a preview to the really big number of this report. South Padre Island up 89.79%. Once again, this is the month of July, the actual July sales, comparing July 2021 to July 2020. Hidalgo County, not to be left too far behind, the big two destination communities there are McAllen and Mercedes. McAllen was up 29.54%, almost 30%, and Mercedes was up a whopping 67.5%, which is wonderful news for Mercedes that really struggled and suffered during 2020. So a nice rebound there as well. And so we see really some of these destination communities roaring back, but once again, we're looking at 2021 numbers to 2020. July of 2020 was a challenging time. It was really kind of our rise of our infection wave there. So let's look back at 2019, compare 2021 to 2019 numbers, since that really tells us more about the health of the economy.
Matt, before you do that, as you gave us the figures for the valley as a whole, 22.87.
Yep.
And you gave us Hidalgo 22.19, Cameron 26.32. Just tell us Willacy and Star, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. So those numbers actually fluctuated not as strongly or a little bit differently. So Starr County was up 4.5% only, and Willacy County as a whole was actually down 5.1%. Now there's a caveat to that, and that once again goes back to the fact that in 2020 the smaller communities, particularly our more rural areas, did exceptionally well. And so since we're comparing 2021 numbers to 2020, those offsets happened there. And that's why I'm going to mention, let's pivot over to 2019. I'll compare 2020 to 2019, since that really gives us a better impression of, how's the economy performing now in 2021 compared to 2019 pre-COVID, when things were going relatively strong.
Okay.
Once again, let's look at the reference numbers. State as a whole, comparing the July sales in 2021 to the July sales in 2019 was up 14.53%. Very strong number for the state as a whole. Really shows the strength of the economic recovery across this broad spectrum across our state. Let's look at Webb County. Webb County is up 8.33% for that 2021 to 2019 comparison. Not as strong as the state, but still a very healthy growth of 8.33%. And if we look over to Nueces County, they're effectively flat. They're up 0.47%. So kind of in line with how they performed. What about the Valley? The Valley was much more in line with the state. Valley was up 13.94%. So let's call it 14% for sake of argument. A really good number. And out of the Valley, we see also, once again, good, strong growth out of the major markets. The Hidalgo County number is up 13.29%, once again, comparing 2021 to 2019 in the month of July, with the July sales. And Cameron County was up 16.17%. We had Starr County up 4.89%. And we had Willacy County up 1.65% for the same comparison. If we look at the 2019 numbers as a whole, before I dive into individual communities, 40 out of 44 communities are up in July, or up in July 2021, into July sales for 2021 compared to 2019. That's a very healthy number. 40 out of 44 communities are up. We had 32 out of those 44 communities up over 5%. Which is a very good number. And we had the 19 out of 44, so almost half, up over 20%. And this, once again, is a very good indicator that we have a very strong local economy, a very strong local consumer, and that the growth is broad-based. It's not just a couple of communities that are doing well and are kind of skewing the numbers. It's everybody across the board, almost everybody across the board is doing very, very, very well. And when we look at the major markets, they do very respectably. But once again, it's those middle markets that we talked about, since last year, since the COVID chip discussions, that are also really standing out as well. So broad-based growth. Let's talk about Hidalgo County. Let's start there first. It's the largest market. Couple communities to take a look at. First of all, McAllen up 10.76%. We have Edinburgh up 11.27% for comparison, once again, 2021 to 2019. We had Mission up 16.87%, very healthy. We had Far up 15.15%, and we had Westlaco up 15.91%. And so as we're seeing right here, those mid-sized communities are really kind of seeing some strong growth. And that's not just the mid-sized communities, even the smaller folks. Palmhurst, we talked about Palmhurst in the past. Palmhurst was up 23.31% for that time frame. We look at La Jolla, up 25.3%. And let's pick another random community. Well, let's pick Penitas, one of the smaller markets, up 60.45%, comparing 2021 to 2019. Really stellar performance there. Let's go look over at Cameron County. We had the larger markets. We had Brownsville up 18.23%, very healthy. We had Harlingen up 10.79%, also a good number. And once again, South Padre Island, we are definitely going to the beach. South Padre Island is in July 2021 compared to July 2019. South Padre Island is up 26.71%, so more than a quarter up in that comparison, doing really, really well. And some of the smaller communities and mid-sized communities in Cameron County aren't too far behind, or actually performing quite well. Los Fresnos up 20.91%, La Feria up 50.44%. Then let's pick out Rancho Viejo. Rancho Viejo up 48.46% for that month. So we're seeing really strong growth across the region. Some of the larger communities are doing well. Mid-sized communities doing quite well as well. And then the smaller communities really outperforming, showing that the COVID shift is maybe no longer that much of a shift away from the large communities, but that the strength of the small communities definitely stays there. The one community that stands out in terms of having not performed so well in that 2021 to 2019 comparison is actually Mercedes. They are behind. They are down 8.65%. But in light of what we saw in 2020, that's actually not a bad number. Being down single digits is, in the big picture, relatively good news compared to what we saw in those declines last year. And it was important to keep in mind that we have not had non-essential travel on the bridges since March of 2020. So we're going on, when we look at these numbers, almost a year and a half in terms of no more non-essential travel, which is many Mexican shoppers coming across. So having Mercedes down only in the single digits, it's not a bad result at all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for all that data. That's really interesting. Is there any evidence as to why we've rebounded so well? Is it that the economy is getting back to normal, or are we still benefiting from the government assistance programs, and is that infusion of funding helping?
I think there's a multiplicity of factors going on. I think that the economy overall is doing really quite well. People have become much more economically active. I think there's also another factor there where local folks are spending a lot more money locally. There's no specific statistics I can look at, but just from anecdotal observations, it appears that we do travel a lot less still now out of the area. And therefore, we have more money to spend locally, and we're doing so. I mean, I think the South Padre Island number is a clear indicator that the tourism market here locally is doing well. I'm sure South Padre also benefits from out-of-area visitors, but it does suffer the drawback from the non-essential travel from Mexico still. And nonetheless, even comparing to a relatively healthy 2019, the number is up over 25%, 26.71%. And so I think that this local consumer is spending a lot of money here locally. I think that's very good. I think there is still some benefits from the increased benefits and support, as well as some lagging effect of savings that people had because of those additional support benefits. And I think we're also probably starting to see some of this increase in wages that is starting to trickle into the marketplace as well, maybe having an impact here. But once again, overall, holistically speaking, this is a really good story. Like I said, even if we haven't talked every single month for the last 6 months, the story is really consistent along that route. If I bounce back to looking at the numbers comparing 2021 to 2020, and we look at that year-to-date number, how we are doing, the valley as a whole year-to-date is up 20.82%. The state as a whole is up 13.23, which means we're outperforming the state year-to-date performance by several percent. I mean, we're talking about 7%, yeah, over 7%. And that's a really healthy number. We had this conversation in the past, but maybe a year ago, we talked about the potential that we might see the situation where we never really dipped hard across as a region as a whole, and then rebounded quite strongly, much stronger than others around us. And that discussion seems to be coming true here, because like I said, we're outperforming the state by 7 percentage points year to date. We're outperforming Webb County also quite healthily. Webb County was up 16.02%. So that puts us, what is that? So my head real quick, about 4%, a little bit more than 4.5% up on Webb County. And Nueces County's number for year to date is up 8.04%. So we are outperforming them by over 12% in terms of year to date. And so I think we're seeing a solid local economy, a solid local consumer, a variety of factors that's helped driving that solidity. But the one thing that's really interesting about this, that solid consumer is resilient. Because we've had the same conversation about the solid local consumer now for going on a year. And the consumer continues to deliver.
And we've mentioned in the past how you've sort of been pleasantly surprised that we haven't really seen any tremendously negative statistics, given that the international bridges have been closed to the Mexican visa holders.
Mm-hmm.
We've all, it would have been even better if they'd been here shopping
Mm-hmm.
in local malls, but that hasn't happened since, as you said, March 2020. But we're hearing now that we could finally get them back, and it could be November. In your conversations, are you hearing anything like that?
It's kind of somewhat what I'm reading through the grapevine as well. Everybody obviously, I don't think anybody's going to make a big advertisement, way out before that decision is made. But as the European travel restrictions are looking to be lifted in the November timeframe, maybe similar rules and regulations will start applying also for folks who are crossing the bridges into the U.S., both from the Mexican side and the Canadian side. So we'll see when that gets loosened up, and it'll be really exciting to see of how the dynamic and how the consumer has changed. I think what we are seeing in these numbers, particularly with the smaller communities really doing well, the fact that this region is doing so exceptionally well, despite not having our friends from down south, the Mexican shoppers, coming in, I think it shows that our consumer behavior regionally has changed. And so it'll be really exciting to see how the consumer behavior has changed for our Mexican national friends who would be coming over to our region to shop. Will they still look for the same destinations? Will they still shop in the same communities, in the same stores, or will there be changes? But overall, obviously, more shoppers in the market is always a positive. And so I hope for a bounce. It's hard to tell what the bounce might be, but hope we'll have at least a small bounce. And our communities and our economy continues to perform really well.
My concern there is because the bridges have been closed since March 2020, that possibly or probably a lot of the Mexican visa holders will have their visa cards will have expired, lapsed, and they haven't renewed because there was no point renewing. It costs money to renew. The renewals weren't made when the cards lapsed. And now suddenly the bridge is going to be, hopefully everyone's hoping and believing they're going to be reopened, and Mexican visa holder then has to apply. And it's very bureaucratic. It's very, it takes so long. We've heard, 6, 9, 12 months process. You go to Matamoros and you make the application, and you don't get your new visa card for a year. So I think a lot of people could be in that sort of trapped in that situation of not being wanted to come over to see family and wanted to come over and shop, go to the island, but still cannot because they've got to get that visa.
Yeah, Steve, I think we both have plenty of personal experience with the U.S. immigration system as well. So it can be bureaucratic and sometimes quite slow. And just like any type of change, unless it's dramatic, some major event, it comes in waves, right? And it's a gradual process. I will tell you that I actually do have quite a bit of faith in the staff over at the consulates, Matamoros or wherever else in Mexico folks might be going to do their paperwork, because I think there's definitely a vested interest in the United States once these bridges reopen to have people come back. So I can definitely see these folks working, overtime to make that transition or that renewal or reapplication process as smooth and as quick as possible. So I don't necessarily see that we're going to have, a scenario where there's people just what's the word, chomping at the bit, I think is the saying, to come over but cannot for bureaucratic reason, and that's just changes their mind forever. I think there will be a process, but I'm quite optimistic that they will come back. But back to the conversations that we had a year or a year and a half ago, almost now, when we lost these Mexican shoppers, the impact on our numbers was not necessarily dramatic. It was felt, but it wasn't as dramatic. And so as we regain them, I also don't expect that the impact will be dramatic, particularly not on day one. I think it will be a gradual process as we return to quote unquote normal, or not to use a overused phrase. We will figure out what our binational shopping new normal looks like.
Yeah, good point. Let me go back then. It's yet again another very positive report from you. Earlier you gave us the year to date 2021 compared to 2020, and obviously a lot better because of what we all went through in 2020. Have you been able to crunch the numbers on year to date 2021 compared to 2019?
No, I don't actually, unfortunately, have a specific number on this report on that, but I will tell you that having looked at these reports, for the comparison 2021 to 2019 on a monthly basis, now for 9 months out of the year, of the 12 months of the year, so 3/4 of the way through. I'm sorry, yeah, it's 3/4 of the way through. I will tell you that those numbers are generally positive. I don't have a specific number I can give you, but I can tell you that the trend is definitely up as well. And so, once again, I'm very upbeat, even though at this point in time, I've been upbeat for such a long time, I might not sound as excited. But good news is always good news. And I think that this report, once again, represents good news. What will be really interesting is the next month's report. When the October report comes out and we can look at those numbers, those will be in August sales. And August is back to school time period. Obviously, we didn't have much of a back to school in 2020. So I would expect that those numbers will look quite good. But I think it will be really interesting is to look at that back to school 2021 to the back to school in 2019 and see if there is a change. Because once again, even though we returned to school, we didn't return to school we returned to school in a new reality, in a new system, in some cases hybrid. So it'll be interesting to see what the impact and what the numbers will be there. So I definitely look forward to seeing those numbers. Though now I will lean gently out the window and be relatively confident those numbers will look quite good compared to 2020 for obvious reasons. But it'll be the interesting comparison will be the comparison to 2019. And maybe at that point in time, I appreciate you bringing that up. I can crunch those numbers for 2019 as well for the year to date and give you a little more details there.
Well, that's great, Matt. Thank you so much. The bottom line, the Valley economy becomes more and more resilient. That's what we're finding, that your reports have shown that over the months. We can withstand these economic challenges that other regions face in the country. We seem to get through them a little better than some of the others. So that's great. That's all. Those are all the questions I have, Matt. Anything else you want to say?
No, I think you summed it up really well. We seem to, and now we see this over decades, right? As we looked at these numbers for a while now, that the economy here is very resilient. That if we face challenges, we rebound from them very quickly. And I will tell you that I am looking into the longer term future fairly optimistic. Obviously, last year taught us a lesson to never assume things too far ahead because you never know what's going to happen. But on the flip side is, as I'm looking at this storybook, a lot of this has very similar has a very similar feel to what we experienced post the financial crisis, post the Great Recession. And so if that's going to be our playbook for the next decade, then we have another very bright decade ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Matt. Thank you again. As everyone knows, we've been listening and watching today the monthly sales report for Matt Ruszack, Vice President for Economic Development at CoStep. Matt, let's keep this going and get back to doing them every month, because your reports are very keenly anticipated by the Rio Grande Guardian viewers. Thank you again.
I appreciate you, Steve. Thank you. Looking forward to being with you again in October on the October report.